Hey, and welcome to a new episode of Character Bio, the series where normally I'd go into the cast of characters across Ether and Dark Ether storylines, but today's unique. Today we dive into a different story, a story frozen in time, to discuss Alistair Rhodes. We begin in 1897. The young Scarlet Rhodes is taken on a museum trip with her father Alistair, believing and hoping for it to just be a simple venture to gaze at the exhibits and learn about them, but, well, unfortunately for her, Alistair had different plans. Bringing her along, he asks her to keep watch for any incoming guards as he procures something stowed away. What is this item? I have no idea. I don't think it's ever name-dropped, referenced, or hinted at, so it's just a thing with blue gems for now. Anyway, Scarlet failed to warn her father in time, resulting in him being taken away. Scarlet is dropped off at an orphanage for the rest of her youth, forging her own path independent of her father, whom she hoped would come rescue her. He didn't. What was Alistair doing all this time? Presumably studying over the artifacts he sought to harness, and of the dastardly cult that was pursuing the same thing, the Order. At his manor, he was researching his house and the land's history, the druids that had a temple beneath the area, the burning down of the house back in the 1600s, the discovery of 3 suits of armor from the late 1400s, a wicker man, and a small figurine of what appeared to be a werewolf, but these details aren't overly important right now. So we jump to September, in the year 1910. Alistair has traveled to Morocco, planning to meet with a French legionnaire named Bruno Delacroix. It seemed that he was in a bit of a scuffle with some love-struck bickering legionnaires. Breaking up the fight and scooting them off, Bruno turned to see an elderly man. He told the stranger, "I feel perhaps that you are a bit old to join the Legion." The elderly man replied in terrible French, causing Bruno to interrupt him, telling him that he can speak English better than Alistair can French. Alistair then requests if there is a place they can chat. He pushes Bruno on why he joined the Legion, even though he is already fully aware of Bruno's complicated history. He offers a means to gain closure on his past, if he can help him obtain a relic they currently have in their possession. The offer appeals to Bruno, and the two venture off to Turkey. While Bruno hid in the showers, Alistair staged a trap on the road. His car broke down, forcing the gangsters to stop in their tracks. Suspicious already, one of the gangsters investigates, approaching Alistair. Alistair informs the gangster that his vehicle is having trouble and needs help repairing it, and he'll be on his way. The men in the back of the vehicle grow impatient and uneasy, readying their handguns, and the two prepare to leave the vehicle, until Bruno ambushes them, smashing one skull to the ground, while Alistair slams the head of another in the car's engine. Taking out some more of their men, Bruno literally flips a car over the cliff with his own hands, taking the crate they sought from the gangsters. With the crate in their possession, Alistair and Bruno start driving away from the scene. Bruno then informs Alistair that they've caught the attention of the entire gang, and they are now hot on their trail. So Bruno holds him off in the only way Bruno could, leaving their adversaries in the dust. Arriving at a cave, Alistair unlocks the crate and reveals the artifact he sought, the Scepter of Ra. For now, merely acting as a lamp. But its light, however, reveals a series of hieroglyphs in the cave's interior, unveiling secrets that Alistair will need as he plans his next phase of his journey. But the awe and amazement is cut short as the remaining members of the gang have caught up to them. The leader of them, Remy Lebeau, sends in his men to find, capture, and kill Bruno and Alistair. Quickly before continuing, why do the gangsters have the Scepter of Ra? Well, they were going to sell it to the Order, who was seeking the scepter for their own nefarious purposes. I'll discuss its side effects soon enough. Using the shadows to his advantage, Bruno eliminates the intruders. However, Alistair was less successful, being taken captive by the gangsters and held hostage personally by Remy. Bruno exits the cave, telling Remy, there is no need for this. Aware that the Order needs Alistair alive, Remy tosses him aside, opening fire on the charging Bruno. Despite all the bullets that pierced through his chest, Bruno kept charging forward, grabbing Remy's head and crushing his skull. Both Remy and Bruno fall to the ground dead. To save his current ally and owing his life, Alistair wields the Scepter of Ra, releasing a golden beam that reverses his wounds, bringing Bruno back from the dead. Either unaware or didn't care in the moment, the resurrection of Bruno with the scepter started the slow process of corruption. When one is revived with the Scepter of Ra, it births an evil, dark duplicate that is stored away in your subconscious. This voice grows louder and louder until it takes control of the individual. Though this info isn't important to Alistair or this video, I just felt it was worth mentioning. Anyway, with Bruno revived, he vows allegiance to Alistair. Should he ever need him, Bruno will be there. As for Alistair, he's acquired another piece of the puzzle and ventures off to Cambodia. Which brings us to March 1911. Alistair met with an old friend, Stanton Shaw. He seeks Shaw's help, believing his quest ahead will require an alchemic expert, and Shaw is the perfect candidate. Unfortunately for Alistair, Shaw has got himself caught up in quite the predicament of his own. German officers enter the bar, seeking out Shaw, restraining him. The main officer speaks up. 147. Unsure what he means by that, the officer continues. The leak killed 147 men. My men. Pleading for his life, insisting the weapon he developed for them, the weapon that malfunctioned, was a mere accident, a miscalculation. Alistair interjects, saying he needs Shaw alive. Uninterested in Alistair's needs, he tries a different approach. He offers a weapon greater than they could possibly imagine, speaking into the officer's mourning over his lost men. Traveling to Angkor Wat, Alistair, Shaw, and the German officers begin entering the temple. What they immediately find are a series of symbols drawn across the walls. They speak of prima materia, and more importantly, a secret room behind the wall. With a simple push, the group finds a small, empty room, with nothing worth mentioning aside for a plinth at the back of the room, with a vase resting on top. Alistair and Shaw try to warn the officer not to meddle with the vase, but the officer ignores their warnings, not believing in superstition. Removing the lid, trails of prima materia escape and slither into the startled officers. The men start to rot, changing into zombies. Shaw, in disbelief at what he's seeing, is dragged away by Alistair. The zombies begin their approach. The only surviving guard, in the same state that Shaw is in, can't bring himself to open fire on the approaching horde, causing Shaw to punch the guard and take his weapon. The zombies are briefly distracted by the unconscious guard, devouring him in front of the two last survivors. Alistair and Shaw start running away from the horde after they have finished their feast, their eyes and fangs now targeting the duo. Shaw uses the rifle to hold them back, but it's utterly useless, only slowing them down for brief moments. Unable to outrun their undead stalkers, Shaw comes up with a plan to ensure their survival. Handing Alistair the rifle, Shaw begins mixing the chemicals that he stole from the German officers just prior to entering the temple. Now being the one to hold off the incoming threat, Shaw quickly puts his weapon together. Out of ammo, the two are pushed further back. Shaw tosses his weapon, causing a huge explosion, caving in the temple and preventing the undead from escaping, and more importantly, devouring them. In the calm, a second, larger explosion follows, the rest of the temple caving in. The two flee from the temple before they can share the same fate as their now dead, zombified enemies. Back at the bar, Alistair thanks Shaw for his help. Not just in his quick thinking that guaranteed their survival, but his translations over the symbols they found. Thanks to that, Alistair knows where he must go next. Now in Juarez, Mexico, Alistair schedules a meeting with heartthrob spy, Diego Nicali. He wasn't all that difficult to track down or get a hold of, what with the magazine that plasters his name and image on the covers. And so, Diego arrives at the designated meeting area, having just finished one of his many great adventures. Alistair tells him he wishes to have the medallion that Diego carries around his neck. Diego tells him that he cannot have it. It was an heirloom passed down through his family. His mother gave it to him, telling him of its great importance. But to him, it's just a medallion. But to Alistair, it is the key, a head that requires its body. Their meeting is interrupted, however, by a group of men who align with the order, stating the medallion is theirs and that Alistair cannot have it, and cannot be trusted. They bicker over the medallion and their intentions for it until Diego interjects. He says, "I admit this is interesting. I was inclined to think the old man was mad, but if he is, then you've proved he's not alone." Unwilling to hand it over to the mysterious group that's currently restraining Alistair, Diego makes the first strike, fending off the group of men, letting Alistair out of their clutches. Unable to escape the bar without a fight, Alistair joins and assists Diego. As the fight continues, the one in charge of this group delivers a powerful blow to Diego, rendering him unconscious. Alistair is captured and taken away. In their custody, he tries to fend them off, bringing out a revolver. However, he can't bring himself to take the life of another, allowing for him to become easily restrained once more. Thankfully for him, Diego awakens and catches up. "I do not believe he wants to go with you, my friends," he says, landing on 3 of the men, taking them down, providing Alistair with a chance to escape, while Diego holds off the rest of the cult members. Taking their carriage, Alistair rides off from the brawl. Needing to catch up with said carriage, however, Diego pushes past his opponent, hoisting himself on top of the fleeing carriage. Determined, the head of the group grabs hold of Diego's leg. He kicks him off, believing them to be dealt with, but he climbs back on top, persistent as ever. An annoyed Diego gives one last line. "If there are 2 things you should know about me, my friend, it is that I am the one who does the stealing, and 2, no one knows the city as well as me. For instance," Diego ducks down, "about that overhang." The cultist is greeted face first with a stone overhang, being knocked off the carriage and down onto the dirt. Back in the city, and after the adventure they've just gone through, Diego gives Alistair the medallion, or rather, he loans it. With everything in his possession to begin his grand quest, Alistair travels back home to celebrate. However, well aware of the new danger he is in, having been nearly caught by the Order 3 times now, he stows the medallion away in a letter that he writes for his daughter Scarlet. Hearing a commotion outside of his room, Alistair goes to investigate, only to find his butler, Godfrey. Before his guests could have arrived, it seems the Order has beat him to it, and right he was in that suspicion. A corrupted Godfrey attacks the defenseless Alistair, bringing him to the Order. And by the time Scarlet arrived at Alistair's mansion, she was too late. Some strange disaster occurred in the manor, with Godfrey being the last one standing next to 3 freshly killed corpses. She shoots him in the back, demanding him to tell her where her father is. He simply tells her, "You are already too late. You cannot stop what is to come." She spotted a car leaving the manor, with her dad held in the back. Rushing to her own vehicle, she tries to rescue her father, but she is, as Godfrey said, too late. Opening the letter, she is given the medallion, the identities of people who will help her should she ask for it, and 4 tickets for the RMS Titanic. As for Alistair, he's then seemingly brought on a series of quests, dragged along by the Order until they make their way to the underground city of Delphi, where it seems he and the Order met their fates by the city's oracle, who is later revealed to be Medusa. And that is where Alistair's story ends. With Chaos not having any form of continuation, as of now, it would seem that Alistair's fate is sealed in stone. Except this wouldn't be the last time we hear of Alistair, no. In the Dark Ether storyline, in 1944, at the Okinawa military base referred to as Shinonuma, do we hear a radio by Professor Gabriel Kraft. Going through his history with Wolfram von List and the research he's done on the Dark Ether, the artifacts they discovered, and the entities they've encountered, he states that all of this reminds him of Alistair Rhodes, a personal hero of his and an, quote, amateur demonologist. According to Kraft, Alistair had writings about Sentinel artifacts, but Kraft never did find out what exactly Alistair's discoveries were, or what they truly meant. So I suppose this could mean a few things, and we'll have to see if Treyarch decides to dig up Chaos from its premature grave. Would I like to see that? Absolutely. I love the Chaos story. But I also want Dark Ether to be able to stand on its own legs without further relying on other stories. But like I said, we'll see. And whatever they decide to do, I'll probably be there. But with that is the end of this video. Thank you for watching, and I'm sorry for the delay. Computer problems suck. But hey, I got one now, so we're back in business. I wouldn't expect too much more Chaos videos from me, unless you do want more, then I'll consider it. This was only made due to his mention in Vanguard. But anyway, thank you again. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Craft to Special Forces. I have an update about that page from the Tome of Rituals that you fought so hard to obtain. Velika and I have completed our study of its contents. It appears we struck gold, as the Americans are fond of saying. The page recounts how a group of priests and officials in Okinawa Prefecture banded together to save their lord from what they considered demonic possession. In fact, this man had bonded with Syraxis, much the same way that you are currently bonded to your ethereal allies. They arranged a visit to the swampy island where you now find yourselves, and ambushed him with a special relic, while the page gives specific instructions on the use of that relic to sever the bond between a Dark Ether entity and its human host. It gives no description of the relic itself. It reminds me of when I studied the writings of Alistair Rhodes, an amateur demonologist and personal hero of mine. Rhodes wrote about different objects of power that he called Sentinel artifacts, but I was never able to find out exactly what they were. Nevertheless, if we can find the relic we seek at Shinonuma, I am quite certain I can use it on Von List and trap Cortifex in that little scepter of his.